In this video, I'm going to talk about literature review. What is a literature review? So if you are going to conduct a thesis or draft an article, this video would be useful to you. By the end of this video, you will understand what is a motivation or why we need a problem statement and what is the value or impact of a research project. And you will be able to understand what types of literature review can be useful to your work, such as critical review or systematic review or theoretical, empirical, integrative or meta-analysis types of reviews. And also we'll see what is the structure of a literature review. Problem statement is very important. It should be clear at the beginning of the research report, and sometimes some people prefer to start with a strong motivation, but this section, if you have a section about motivation or problem statement in your thesis or in the introduction of your paper, you need to support whatever you say by different resources, and then you need to clarify the focus of your investigation. Your research questions, aims and objectives will be defined by your motivation or problem statement, and the question shouldn't be like yes or no in terms of the response of that specific question, and usually it's preferred to be like how or why, because you're going to explore something, identify causes and effects or something similar. And when you define your problem, your research question, your aims and objectives, then you need to say who will benefit from your outcome, how and what kind of benefit. So what is important now is the problem should be significant, because you are going to set your project, all those questions and objectives based on something important. If it's not a matter, you're not gonna conduct a thesis or research based on such a problem. And sometimes this is common. Some of the students, they conduct a complex research method and at the end they come up with obvious outcomes, and this is waste of time and resources. So you need to see how significant is the problem and how the outcome can be beneficial or useful. So here you can see a couple of evidence evidence and examples of topic related to smart home. So you can see the issue is energy consumption, but this can be reduced by conducting by implementing a specific technology or a specific strategy in different contexts. So you can see the rate of reduction can be 9.5%, or in some texts can be 30 or 38, 40, 10%. Depends on that specific approach in those articles. So you can find details of this example here in this research project. Okay, stop. Okay, so you can find more examples or details of this example in this link. The paper already has been published, and this is a long paper and it's a good systematic paper. So you can find out what kind of problem they were dealing with or they presented in the paper. The other one is here, what kind of sources are useful for your problem statement or to support your problem, or maybe you want to identify a problem. So it's not limited to journal articles. If you want to write review papers or review the literature, of course books and journal articles should be selected. But if you want to identify the problem or support your problem, cite a couple of resources, then every kind of document or data or information available can be useful, and you can use it to support the problem. But the quality of the information is very important. There is a checklist here, like currency, authority, accuracy, and purpose of that specific publication or document, and you need to double check if it's a current publication or published 5 years ago, 10 years ago. If it's outdated, then it's not gonna be important. Maybe that's why it still is a problem and no one tried to solve it. And also, who is the author? Who is the author or the publication, the publisher itself? So can you trust them or not? And the accuracy of their work is high, or you can check their research methods and find some more information on the web or the publication to find out or guess how accurate is it. And the purpose of that research, if it's a research based document or a report, needs to be examined, because if it's like a funded project or someone got money to develop such a research, there is a possibility of bias in that specific publication, and this is not good to be used for your introduction section or your problem statement section. So the question is, when we are talking about how useful is the thesis or the research, or what is the impact of that, then I guess this diagram can be very useful, because it shows a couple of examples here, like Louis Pasteur talking about a fundamental work, and this is a theoretical base or based on advanced knowledge. At the same time, whatever he contributed in is medicine and health, and that work affects on everybody in the world. The same as whatever Edison has done many years ago, and his work actually is pure applied science. It's a pure applied work. So the impact of his work also is high, because everybody in the world is using that specific product or outcome of that specific research. But like a scientist like Bohr has done something in physics and highly advanced, fundamental in terms of theory, but not everyone is going to use it directly. So myself and yourself, maybe we don't use it directly. So these two green boxes are good examples of something very, very fundamental. Like the Bohr example is something fundamental theory in physics, and Edison did something purely applied, and this affected on our lives over time. So these two examples, they show how useful are those projects or works in different ways. But the orange box is a good example because it has both of them in terms of knowledge and being fundamental at the same time, something useful for everyone. But there is a black box here. You can see this black box here is something unclear in terms of significance, maybe important, maybe not, we don't know. And there are some measures for impact. So if you want to say the impact of a project or an article is high, you can see the number of downloads, altimetrics, if how many people in social media are talking or mention that a specific article or work, and also the number of citations. But these indicators are not perfect, because they can't give you an insight into that specific word in terms of impact in a short term, because it needs some time or like a couple of years to get more citations for a specific paper. So you can't get scientific citation in 1 month or 2 months. So it's not really a good measure sometimes. But why you do a literature review? You need to be clear on this. It's not a task doing a literature review. It's you have a purpose. It should be useful in your thesis as well. So I'm going to show some of them here. For example, you can say that I'm going to explore what is going on in the field, what is the current literature, state of the art, and you can learn key concepts and terminologies. So this is something most of the students they do perfectly, because they learn from the literature in terms of concept, definitions, terminology, and also they write a couple of pages about that. But the next step is, or the next purpose is, identify directions, themes, patterns, or any relationship between them. This is something not every student can do that, and this is something you need to focus on, this to identify different groups, clusters, and patterns. The next one is also very important, is critical analysis. So you get more points if you show that you are able to analyze the current literature in terms of what is positive about it, what is the weakness or deficiencies in the literature or specific article. So this skill should be demonstrated in your literature review. Then you can identify if there is any conflict in the literature, controversy, debate, that kind of things with evidence, which is very important. And the other item is gaps. This is something everyone needs to do. So you need to analyze the gap based on the literature you've done, and show next step, what is your direction, what you're gonna do based on this gap. And then some people maybe use the literature review for future policy making or for practice. This paper here is a good example of a literature review. So you can see in this paper how the gap has been analyzed, and also different directions, patterns, and clusters identified in these papers. But the next question is how many resources we should use, or how many papers we should cite. So it depends on the nature of your work. Are you going to conduct a thesis? Then you need, as you see in that figure, you need a comprehensive literature review, and your literature review is a part of a big project, so it's one chapter. But if you are going to an assignment, you don't need a comprehensive literature review. You just select some papers, even 4 or 5 papers would be enough, and you do your assignment. And if you are going to do a review journal article, you're gonna submit or publish a review paper, then you need to have a comprehensive understanding of the literature, and this is not a part of a different project. It can be a standalone work, and you publish it just as a review paper. And a common method to review papers is critical literature review. In a critical literature review, you review different articles and examine them and show how good they are, or negative aspects of that specific work, deficiencies, weakness, or omissions, inaccuracies, or any issues relevant to that specific paper or a group of papers. So this should be reported in your critical literature review. Systematic review, as it's clears by the word of systematic, the word systematic shows that the entire process from the beginning to the end should be based on a specific logic and should be systematic. For example, here this is just an example. We don't have only one way to conduct a systematic review, but this paper is an example of a systematic literature review. There are a couple of steps shown here. The first step is to select your database. You need to select your database. Is that a Scopus? Is that Web of Science and or Engineering Village, or what kind of data set you're gonna use, or maybe a combination of those databases should be used. For example, here we have a few blue boxes and a few green boxes, so it means two different databases used in this specific paper. And for example, Scopus the result of the Scopus database was 460, and then later some eligibility criteria applied and the result decreased to 90. So this is something step by step. You apply different filtering criteria or eligibility criteria and you decrease the number of papers. Then at the end you come up with, for example, 30 papers, and you review the content of those 30 papers only, not 460. So that's the process of systematic review. But if you want to search and find the papers, the keywords are important. So what kind of keywords you're going to use? So this is very important. If you miss one word or even one letter, then you will miss many papers relevant to that specific topic or word. Even one letter is important. So you need to make sure that you're not going to miss a word, and if one word is not relevant or is not common in that specific field, you shouldn't use, because then you will get many irrelevant papers, and then your job is going to be very difficult to find those papers and exclude them later. And there are so many different types of criteria or measures that you can consider in your search, in terms of, are you going to limit your search to one specific database, to one specific year or a range of years, specific time, like for example from 1990 to 2019, and also the publication name, or like publication source name, like the publisher, who is the publisher, or maybe you exclude some of them, you include some of them. All of those items can be considered when you want to conduct a systematic review. There is another example presented here. You can download this one and see this. There is the network analysis here presented, and this is based on VOS viewer software, for example, or maybe you can use different networking analysis and or any kind of software packages that are useful for network analysis can be used for literature review, systematic literature review as well. A couple of items here, you can see the outline here. Some of those subtopics should be addressed in your literature review. So if you ask about the body of the literature review, then we can say, okay, it should be like the review methods in this specific chapter, results discussion. You need to discuss the results as well, how important they are, and then clarify those results to the audience. So there is a template for literature review. So if you use this template, then you can clarify different steps of your work as well. So this is another way to show how systematically you have done your work. You can see each N here refers to number of papers produced based on this specific task in this box. And here, for example, there are 4 stages for reviewing the literature. So we call it Prisma flow diagram. So you can use this Prisma flow diagram. If you search this word, you can find the template with more details. There are 2 different types of literature in terms of theoretical and empirical literature review. The theoretical approach actually focuses on different theories. If you want to analyze different theories, conceptual models, and at the end come up with a set of hypotheses or theoretical propositions, or you want to develop a conceptual model by your own for your own thesis, then this is a good approach to review theories and models. So a theoretical literature review is going to be beneficial. The other one is empirical literature review, which is very common, and many people they select this approach, and it's reviewing empirical investigation. So it's the focus of this literature review is previous investigations and observations. So this is good to talk about their weakness and limitations and identify the gap and set your research questions. You can use integrative review, and this, if you want to develop a research agenda or taxonomy, or revise a conceptual model, or conduct a meta-analysis, this approach will be useful, and in this way you can summarize past empirical and theoretical literature, and this sort of combination of both of them to provide a more comprehensive understanding of a phenomenon. Okay, the last type of the analysis is meta-analysis. So it's mainly synthesis of multiple sources, because you want to extract data from similar studies. So if there are many studies focusing on a specific topic and they are similar in terms of the measures or the method of the investigation, then maybe you can conduct a statistical analysis to identify the significance of results. And measures, usually like common measures, are the effect size and study size. These 2 papers are useful. If you read these 2 papers, you can find more details of a meta-analysis. Right now your task is to decide about your own literature review. So what kind of approach, purpose, or keywords you're gonna use, and you need to find relevant papers to your topic. And if you find a similar review paper in your field which is relevant to your topic, that can be very helpful to learn how they have done the literature review in that specific field, and then you can draft your literature review. Most of sources actually listed here, and you can download them and find more information relevant to different topics about literature review. Thank you for watching this video, and that's a coffee time.